Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. Fade to Black. I just get all sucked in with that intro and Twitter right before showtime. How you doing? This is Fade to Black. Let's get this one cracking. All right, I just got to say to other producers outside of the studio walls on the other side of the glass, just run with it. I got nothing for you. Just run with it. Just post it and let me know when it's up. That's how we do it here, organization. How you doing, everybody? What's going on? Let's go. This is Fade to Black, Monday. Bespoke radio for the masses. That's for Nancy Burns. Nancy says I say that too much, but that's our tagline. That's what we run with here. That's how we roll. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Monday, August 4th. Welcoming everybody around the country, around the world, listening to the show tonight. We are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in sunny Burbank, California for KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your humble host, Jimmy Church. Welcome. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there's no me, there is no you, there is no us, there's no freedom of speech. This show, this station, this network, nothing exists. Think about that. Today, let's get it cracking. Let's go. We are 4 days and counting. It's kind of weird how we do the math, how that works. Today's Monday. We're going to be at Contact in the Desert Friday. So is that 4 days? It's kind of like, when you're doing that countdown to Christmas Eve and Christmas Day when you're a kid. You want to cheat your mind, try to gain a day somewhere. But are we 4 days away from Contact in the Desert? Are we 5 days? No, are we 5? Today's Monday. We're 4 days away from Contact in the Desert. My. Today, President Barack Obama is 53 years old. And it's a good thing when I'm still younger than the president. So there you go. I feel good about myself. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Tweet deck is wide open to my left. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You want to hashtag DMRadioNet, go hang out with everybody. I'm looking. There's Michael Anderson. There's Dale. There's Allison. There's Ken. Ken number 1. Dave. Space Boy. Michael Keen's in the house tonight. Of course, Leslie's always there. Lynn Lewis listening from Australia. And I'm glancing over here, and I see a Family Guy pic. What is this all about? All right, that was good. That was from Dave C. All right. Yeah, come hang out with us. Yeah, Charles. Charles is there. Charles Merritt. Charles in charge. So, absolutely, come hang out with us, which is at JChurch Radio and hashtag DMRadioNet. We are a friendly bunch. It's a great family, those Fadernauts. Hey, what'd you think of that? Man, what do you think of that Fadernaut patch, huh? Wow. And then Brian Anderson's in the house. I am so, when I first saw it, I got to tell you, I just wanted to cry. Somebody putting in that much effort. And that was from method of signaling. And thank you for that. Now we've got to figure out what we're going to do with it. I mean, well, the answer is everything. What not to do with it, actually, is where we are going with that. Okay, so Brock, what was I was leading into something when I said that. Doesn't matter. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can also do that over on the contact page on the website, jimmychurchradio.com. Just head over there and contact page, and you can shoot an email. Everything goes through the producers here. I know where I was going with that. Contact in the desert. So today, I reached out to our good friend John Anthony West. Just have a little conversation, and he's going to be at Contact in the Desert, and I just wanted to, just call, say hello, what's going on, and do you want to jump on the air Friday night? Absolutely. And we were talking about him the other night with Dolan when Richard was on the show. And so I'm sitting there, I'm Skyping with Jaws, John Anthony West, Jaws. And I'm looking at him, and he sits in his research library where he's got his cameras running and stuff when he's Skype. The background, I'm serious, it is so Indiana Jones. It's just ridiculous. The artifacts and the books and the library and the shelves, and it's this huge room. So cool. So the man has got it going on. Anyways, I'm sitting there rapping with him today, and Richard Dolan calls during our conversation. We had this little conversation, and it was really funny. And so anyway, Jaws is going to be on Richard's show tonight. I think actually they're on the air right now. So there you go. But anyway, everybody talking about how excited they were about Contact in the Desert, which is my point, to have Richard call in and talk to Jaws, and the three of us were there and just talking about the excitement of this week. And so everybody's rolling into town Wednesday and Thursday. We're not going to get there until Friday morning. Obviously, we have a show to do here this week or on Thursday. And so I was sitting there this morning thinking about the week and so forth. And I just realized, we've got 5 live shows this week. 5 shows. And in between, so I get this email today from Renee. She says, so Jimmy, you've got 5 live shows. Plus you have to tear down the studio. Plus you have to set up the studio. Plus you have to tear it down again. I'm like, yeah, thanks. Yeah, exactly. What a week. And, it's going to be adrenaline driven. I'm totally excited about it. Went out and got one of the cars today, all oil changed out and checked out because, it's a 5-hour drive for us to get there. So, and there's no other way for us to do it. We could fly out there, but we got to fly out with, 2 tons of gear. So there you go. All right. So we're 4 days away. It's going to be great. The winners are Walter Lewis, Arturo Portillo, Shakira Bluesun, Rick Sinnott, Michael Rad, Jason Lamp, Ian Fowles, and Kitty Brown. Those are all of the winners, and I cannot wait to see everybody out there. And as far as I know, I've been contacted personally by just about everybody. So excited about that. And I'm so fired up. So we got everything. We're good to go. I mean, Lou's going to be there. Excited about that. Of course, Space Boy and his wife, they're going to be there and putting everybody to work. I'm giving everybody video cameras, sending them out on a mission and to document what they want to document. We're going to put together a pretty cool documentary. And that's going to be, I just can't wait. I can't wait. And I'm going to do as many of the seminars as I can. And that's going to be pretty cool, too. It's going to squeeze in everything. And then, of course, Sunday night, I think it's Sunday night with Stephen Greer and E.T. calling out on the stage. And that is going to be amazing. So anyway, there you go. A couple of things that I wanted to comment on. And actually, I could do some of this after the break. But some of the things I wanted to comment on was one of them is this Ebola thing. And what a perfect opportunity all of this is for money. And you can just see it coming. When now, I'm not saying a flu vaccine isn't necessary, but it's just so funny. Every couple of years we run out of flu vaccine. Somebody somewhere is making a ton of money. And the reason why a lot of research is done or not done in the pharmaceutical industry is profit. Why would, if there's some serious, crazy illness out there, it doesn't matter what it is, but some serious, crazy thing, but it's only affecting 5 people in the world or 200 people in the world annually, what pharmaceutical company is going to dump everything that they have to do to get government clearance and everything else and all the trials and everything that they have to do and all the research to dump into that, hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion for a vaccine for 200 people a year. What's that vaccine going to cost? $1 million a shot to cure something? They don't do it. Of course they wouldn't. They should, but they don't. And so now with this whole Ebola thing, something very strange to me happened, which is suddenly we have this announcement today of a potential vaccine. Now, there's the serum that was used. I get that. I understand. Experimental, so forth. Think about it. Okay. All right. But what a bet. And we're watching this just unroll in front of us, just the carpet rolling out and the entire scenario. Now, it wouldn't be so obvious if we haven't done this with avian this, bird flu that, China this, chickens being killed, things over the years, and just the scare of the flu. And do we have enough flu vaccine? Or do we have and everybody wearing face mask at the airport and riding around in flu incubators called, Boeing 777, whatever. But now this Ebola, this is something that is just right in front of us. And you can just see everything just unfolding right in front of you. Talk about deja vu. It's happening right in front of us. And so now it went from the secret serum, which just so happens that they were tested on 2 white people from the United States. And I find that to be, kind of weird and wrong when we've got, what do they have, 1,600 infected people right now or more? Why are we testing it over there, on somebody else, another life that we could save? But no, we got to save a couple of doctors from the United States. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying, felt a little strange. Felt a little weird about that, man. Go save some kid. Save us too. But save everybody. I just don't get it. Why aren't we just testing it? We're going to test it on, I don't know. It just feels really strange. And then this announcement of this potential, the secret serum has turned into the word vaccine. The word vaccine. Who's Michael? Whose birthday is it today? Somebody needs to punch that back in. It skated past me on a TweetDeck. I'll get a birthday shout out. It's Michael's. It's Michael Keene's birthday today. Right on. Happy birthday, Michael. There's your shout out. Right on. But this vaccine. Now, what a better way to scare the crap out of everybody than bring in a couple of Ebola victims here, here to the United States. Get that scare going. And then this announcement of this potential Ebola guy up in New York, in Manhattan, who rolled it to the hospital today. Hey, oh man, I was in Sierra Leone. I'm not feeling so good. Well, there you go. What hits the news? That hits the wire. That lead story. That. And it all rolled into so many other different things. And that's the way my brain works. When we come after the break, what did that roll into? I'm going to let you know. I'm in a mood tonight. Tonight, Andrew Collins. Don't forget. Andrew Collins in the house with our Gobekli Tepe special. Live from London. Tomorrow, Tobias Churton in the house. Wednesday, OG, Original Gangsta, Norio Hayakawa, right here in Fade to Black. Of course, Thursday night call-in show. Friday, live from Contact in the Desert. All right, follow us on Twitter right now, at JChurchRadio. Hashtag DMRadioNet. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us, everybody.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right. Yeah. Fade to Black. Listen to Doug Shred for a second. All right. Fade to Black. Bottom of the hour. Andrew Collins, our Gobekli Tepe special. Ebola. Oh, follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You want to do that right now. Just go over to, if you're on Dark Matter Radio, you're on our page, scroll up. All the links are there. Facebook, YouTube, everything that you need to do is up there. Oh, we are rapidly moving forward with podcasting with our partner Libsyn. And wow, it's happening so fast. So we're moving forward. So there you go. You got it. You asked for it. There you go. All right. Ebola virus. So the thing is with all of this is we're watching this play out. And I haven't today. I didn't. I was busy all day today. But we, not I. We're all busy today. But I need to. I want to dig a little deeper, and somebody out there is. So tweet in who the pharmaceutical company is that's got the secret serum, and who this vaccine is, because that is, if you chase that down, follow the money trail. That's it. And follow that and just watch what this vaccine is going to do, how they're going to manufacture it, how they're going to get it out there, and who's going to be waiting in line at CVS, at Save-On, at your local Walgreens, Walmart, Costco, lining up for the Ebola vaccine, because it's all about to happen. It's all about fear, man. I'm a little scared. It's just kind of funny. There's going to be something somewhere. Somebody's going to come over, some airplane full of, you just watch some tourists, something. Everybody in Africa now, every American tourist Oh, man. Can you imagine that? Coming in, clearing customs at JFK, Miami, LAX. So where have you been? Well, I was in the Congo. Think about that. Yeah, it's going to happen. That's where the money is. And then equally as funny or alarming, Ebola has allowed the forgottenness of MH17 right out of the headline. Just gone. Putin got his wish. He may not have even had anything to do with it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But it's just amazing how that just got swept under the rug. 370. Yeah. Allison Bell just tweeted, and get microchipped in the deal too. The whole thing about that, and we're going to do a show on that here very soon, by the way, putting that together, microchipping, is, how long, for everybody out there that's stuffing all those greenbacks, all those dollars underneath your mattress, and that's your method of savings, and you just store it under. My great-grandfather, who passed away a few years ago, was really funny. Anyway, hold on, before I even tell any family secrets. But anyway, for all of you that are stashing that money under your mattress, how soon that is just going to be worthless, in that you're not going to need it because you won't be able to spend it anywhere. And this is the crazy thought. Follow me on this. So you get chipped, right? All your money is now under the skin on your right or left wrist. All of your info is there, including your money, and that's how you spend it. That's how you get paid. You don't get a paycheck anymore. Well, we don't do that now, direct deposit, but think about that. So now, if you ever just go the wrong way with the man, you ever go the wrong way, you do something really, 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 really wrong, really bad, you just turn you off. Flip the switch. That's it. You can't eat. You can't pay your rent. You can't make your car payment. And the next thing you know, you're wandering the streets, begging for somebody not to give you change, but to take you into a restaurant somewhere so they can use their chip to buy you food. And then where do you go from there? Do you go to the chip camp where everybody else goes to get your soup kitchen line because they don't have any active chips, and then you go and you reconcile, you get converted again, and then one day you wake up and they go, we're going to turn your chip back on tomorrow. Are you going to behave? Twisted, huh? But that's, so that's the thing. That's the fear. That's the fear. How do we prevent it? How do we prevent it? How do we keep the greenbacks, that the real, you want the freedom. You want the freedom of being able to spend your money where you want, when you want, before you think it's all with a credit card or a debit card running around. No, think about that. That chip is a scary thing. And it ties right back into this. Allison, you're absolutely right. Ties right back into it. All right. So anyway, all right. Now that I got that out, let's change gears. I want to talk movies for a second. Bottom of the hour, squeaky chair. Bottom of the hour, Andrew Collins. We're going to be doing Gobekli Tepe, a few other things. I like the way he's tied in a couple of things too. Gobekli Tepe. We'll be talking about all of that. But last night, I saw a really cool movie. Really cool. It's called Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. You've got to check this flick out. I mean, as far as alien movies go, E.T. movies, go check that flick out. It's got a couple of, don't have children in the room kind of scenes. But if you're an adult, Go check out Under the Skin. Scarlet, man, whoa. Go check it out. Really cool. I need to click over. I'm going to check jimmychurchradio.com really quick, see if we got this stuff posted. And then I'll take you over there and show you these really cool pictures. They should be there. And the other thing that I did my homework on The Shining. The Shining 2.0. Now, if you haven't seen The Shining 2.0, it's a documentary that you can find on YouTube, which is long. And it starts out from the very first shot in the movie. Let's see. Yeah, they're here. Cool. Thank you. Church Rant. Head over to jimmychurchradio.com. Just scroll down right now. These pictures. Last week we had a caller. His name is Carlos. And he called and told us about these pictures. Well, here they are. So just head over to jimmychurchradio.com. They all depict alien activity, ancient alien activity carved on bone and stone. Go check it out. I've seen a few of these, and they're pretty interesting, and I will talk more about this after Andrew Collins tonight, and I'll read you the email and how these came in. All right, so jimmychurchradio.com. Pretty cool. I've seen each one of these. You can click on it, look at the high res, and comments. Pretty cool. All right. Next. Oh, yeah, The Shining 2.0. So the pictures are up at jimmychurchradio.com. Go check those out, and I'll look at your tweet comments, and then I'll give you mine. But The Shining 2.0. So this is what I did. I went and watched The Shining 2.0. I've seen it over the years, or over the past year, a couple of times. So I went and watched it maybe 2 times this week, and I watched The Shining, I think, a total of 4 days this week, over the last week. Yes, I watched The Shining 4 times, beginning to end. And after you watch The Shining 2.0, you got to watch it a couple of times, take some notes, take some mental notes, and get it into your brain is what you got to do. And I did. And so watching The Shining now after The Shining 2.0, no matter what, there's so much data and so many things there. It's all about Apollo 11, the moon hoax, and Stanley's admission of this and his possible apology or whatever. Go and watch it. Because when you watch The Shining now, after Shining 2.0, all you see is Apollo 11, Danny Lloyd, over and every single scene, The Catcher in the Rye. Every single scene, everyone. And I was going through and I'm counting in the background and I'm seeing the 11s everywhere, the window panes. I'm just seeing it. It's everywhere in the movie. And now I got to say, am I totally converted? Man, I don't know what's going on in The Shining. But it has nothing to do with Stephen King. I'll tell you that right now, it is a trip. Take the time to do it, because The Shining 2.0 itself is probably rest at 2 hours, 3 hours. So it's a commitment. It really is. But go do it and then watch The Shining. It is a fantastic thing. All right, let's roll on out of here. When I come back, let's see here. When I come back, Andrew Collins, in a couple of minutes, we will be doing our Gobekli Tepe special all night, live from London. Tomorrow night, Tobias Churton. Wednesday, Norio Hayakawa. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us, everybody. Don't touch that mouse. This is Bespoke Radio for the masses.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Hello?
We're in commercial.
Okay.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Making some notes here. Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Bespoke Radio for the Masses. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Hashtag DMRadioNet. That is what you want to do. You want to come hang out with all of us. And now, listen, we've got a lot of things that are going on, not only tonight, but the rest of the week. And I did want to make another announcement that happened last week. Ken Beck is the winner of the autographed copy of Chariots of the Gods from Eric von Daniken. And congratulations, Ken, on that. And I got to tell you, good job, by the way. Good job. All right, let's get this one cracking. Let's just move forward. Got a lot to do tonight. Andrew Collins is a historical writer and explorer living in the United Kingdom. He is the author of more than a dozen books that challenge the way we perceive the past, my personal favorite subject of all time. They include From the Ashes of Angels, which establishes the watchers of the book of Enoch and the Anunnaki of the Sumerian texts are the memory of a shamanic elite that catalyzed the Neolithic revolution in the Near East at the end of the last ice age. The gateway to Atlantis, which pins down the source of Plato's Atlantis to the Caribbean island of Cuba and the Bahamas. Tutankhamun, man, I cannot get King Tut out of my mouth tonight. The Exodus conspiracy, which reveals the truth behind the discovery of Tutankhamun's famous tomb. The Cygnus Mystery, another favorite of mine, which shows the constellation of Cygnus has been universally venerated as the place of the first creation and the entrance to the sky world since Paleolithic times. And Light Quest, which shows that UFOs are most likely plasma constructs. In 2008, Andrew and his colleague Nigel Skinner Simpson discovered a previously unrecorded cave complex beneath the pyramids of Giza, which has brought him worldwide acclaim. It is a story told in his book, Beneath the Pyramids. Andrew's latest book is Gobekli Tepe, The Genesis of the Gods, which reveals the role played by Gobekli Tepe in the origins of civilization and the rise and myths and legends regarding the watchers of the Book of Enoch, the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki mythology, and the Garden of Eden of the Book of Genesis. I would like to welcome to the program, live from the United Kingdom, Andrew Collins. Andrew, how are you tonight, sir?
Jimmy, yes, yeah, I'm fine. It's about 3:35 in the morning here, but it's still evening where you are. If I sound mellow, that's the reason. I've not had any sleep yet. So
you're always on your game. I'm not worried about that. But for some reason, I can't even get King Tut out of my mouth tonight. So it should be me, not you. So
well, and it's very timely that you mentioned that book, because obviously with all the whole problems in Gaza at the moment, a lot of people are looking towards the origins of all the problems there, and the final quarter of that book is all about exactly how Israel came about, exactly its effect on Palestine, and exactly what was going on in the political world in England and the United States, and obviously in Palestine, at the very time when Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered, and why it's possible that certain items were removed from the tomb because they were, as it were, politically incorrect at a time when everything was being pushed through to create the state of Israel. And that's a true story, and that's told in the book Tutankhamun, The Exodus Conspiracy, which, you know, if anybody wants to read about the background of the whole Gaza problem at the moment, it's all in there, in the final part of the book.
We have, I just want to remind everybody over at jimmychurchradio.com, I took the liberty, Andrew, if you don't mind, the link that I didn't use your normal website link. I've got a link up that goes directly to your book page with all of your books listed. And so as we reference any of this tonight, you just click on Andrew's hyperlink there at Jimmy Church Radio. Take you straight over to all of the books, and there's a good description of every book too. So there you go. And, you know, normally I just link to somebody's homepage and move on, or our web people here, but I just decided to take, straight to your book page. So
thank you very much.
My pleasure. Okay. You know, one of the questions that I have, and I really haven't, talked to any guest about this all year, and it should be something that we should all be alarmed about, is with all of the stuff that is going on in Syria, in Iraq, certainly in Israel right now, in Gaza, and the firing of the missiles that are coming out of the Gaza Strip just all over Israel, is the potential destruction or intentional destruction or accidental destruction of some very, very cool, important historical sites that we may or may not even know about, you know, that are lying buried. And do you freak out? I mean, do you ever just cringe when you start to hear this news, you know, and what they just did in Iraq with ISIS blowing up the Temple of Noah?
Well, the Temple of Noah, I don't think about that. I mean, you're talking about the tomb of Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah,
okay,
Noah.
Right,
well, you know what? The same thing.
You just freaked me out there.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought there was a shrine I didn't know about, and I will never be able to go there again.
Well, that's that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know,
okay,
what if?
The situation, obviously, with Israel and Palestine at the moment is a terrible, terrible thing. And, we need to find a way of resolving this very, very quickly before it gets worse and escalates in areas which are going to cause so much anguish in the world that I don't see any way back from it. So something's got to happen. But from the point of view of antiquities and archaeology, we saw what happened, during the Iraq War, with the Baghdad Museum being raided and looted. We know what's happening with the ISIS, the Islamic State, as they call themselves now, and I'm glad that they've changed. They're not using the ISIS term anymore. And we've seen the fact that the tomb of Jonah has already been destroyed. And this can, in all honesty, only get worse, because obviously the Islamic State are in the process of taking over Iraq. I mean, in all honesty, it's almost lost to the Western world now. And Syria is almost certainly going the same way. And to be honest, once the Islamic State are in control of both of those countries, which I think will occur within, 5 years probably, I would say that their next stop is Palestine. And, they may be saying that they're going in there to help Hamas or whatever, but at the end of the day, their target will be Israel. And God knows what will happen in the world then. And I think that, to be honest, the destruction of a few shrines and tombs here and there is not going to be something which is going to worry us too much. It's what else is going to happen to the world. So obviously I'm looking at it in a very pessimistic way. Obviously we want everything to be resolved in the best possible manner as quickly as it can. But unfortunately, one has to look realistic here. And things are not good in the world at the moment, are they?
Yeah, and when the Cairo Museum, when that was going down, I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And I could just see, King Tut artifacts, marching down the street.
If it had not have been for local people who actually guarded the Cairo Museum, from those intent on looting it, we would have lost Tutankhamun. I mean, we'd have lost so many of the treasures that are in there. But the local people got together and they formed, like a shield around it and prevented people looting it. So, I mean, that's good in the world. There is good in the world. And, we need to find that and nurture it and bring it to the fore because, things can be put right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that, I'm with Russell Brand with what's happening in Gaza at the moment and not on the side of the Fox News anchor. I can't remember his name at the moment, whatever his name is, that Russell Brand referred to as a terrorist basically in the last few days within his video post. And if you haven't seen it, it is worth looking on YouTube for it. It is incredible. Spat between the two of them. You need to see it. But anyway, I think we should be talking about Gobekli Tepe.
Hey, well,
we could be talking about this all night.
Yeah, and which is fine too, but
it is. But in some ways, it's a little depressing. And
well, I watched, and you bring up Russell Brand, and I've been watching his videos lately, and I watched the video with the guy from the BBC too, as well.
Oh yeah.
And I gotta say, Russell's a smart guy.
He is.
He is a very, very smart guy. And for everybody listening, if you haven't checked out Russell Brand's rants lately, go listen to what he's got to say. And when he said that he had never voted in England, I thought, wow, and he's laying it all out there, and he's taking a big chance on everything. When you achieve celebrity and you choose to use your celebrity for message, not only politics or religion, you roll a big dice, and Russell is doing just that right now. But I got to say, he's a very smart cat.
He is. I like him a lot. I think he's a really cool guy.
So, okay, I just didn't want to let Russell go. It just so happens that I have been watching his videos lately, and I don't know how many people are, but he's chosen the path, and now he's crossed the line in the sand. He can't go back. It's all out there.
Good for him.
Yeah,
good for him.
Okay, Gobekli Tepe. Let's start with this because there's so much to discuss. Give us an overview. I talk about Gobekli Tepe every night on this show. It is so important. You were on the show last week to introduce tonight. So, but what is Gobekli Tepe? Let's just start there.
Okay. Well, for those people that don't know what Gobekli Tepe is, if you can imagine our greatest prehistoric monument in England, and that's Stonehenge, you can imagine that, that the stones erected, something that is obviously clearly out of the Stone Age. If you can take that, cover all the stones in beautiful carvings of animals and humanoid features and other abstract art, then multiply it by about 20 times and then place it on the top of a mountain in southeast Turkey, that's what Gobekli Tepe is. And if you add to that the fact it was created at the end of the last ice age, 12,000 years ago, that's how incredible this place is. It's the place that changes everything because it shows us that at the end of the last ice age and possibly using knowledge and technologies that had survived this time of ice, there was the ability to supersize religious sanctuaries in a manner which we normally only associate with the last 5,000 years. And yet here it is. This structural series of structures, because, I mean, there are 4 main enclosures of these stone circles, the oldest in the world. And there are a number of other smaller structures around this. And the archaeologists there, which obviously included the late, great Professor Klaus Schmidt, who obviously died just over a week ago, that they've uncovered probably only about a tenth of the entire place yet. And it's inside this huge, great occupational mound, as they call it, or tepe as it's known locally. And they're gradually uncovering it. Most of it probably won't even be uncovered in our lifetimes, in all honesty. I mean, because the way archaeologists work is they'll do a little bit of work and then they'll stop and dedicate over what's left to the future generations of archaeologists that are going to come along in 50 years' time or 100 years' time and say they'll have better techniques than us. We'll leave that part for them, which I in the case of Gobekli Tepe, I think that this is not the best idea. I think that they should uncover the lot. We really, really need to know what's beneath there, because this is the smoking gun of a lost civilization. There is nowhere else in the world like it at all. There are places like the Sphinx in Egypt, Pumapunka, Tiwanaku in Bolivia, Gunung Padang, the huge pyramidal multi-layered structure in Indonesia. All of these places have been cited to be around the end of the last ice age, constructed at this time by some kind of lost civilization. But that's speculation. There is no speculation at Gobekli Tepe. It's 12,000 years old. Radiocarbon evidence tells us that, and so does the contextual dating of the different stone tools that have been found in their thousands around the structure itself, left behind by the builders, the masons, the technologists involved. Those stones tools are still there, and that can accurately date the place. That matches radiocarbon dating, and we know that the building construction began around 12,000 years ago and ended around 10,000 years ago, quite abruptly. And after that, the place was left right the way through. Well, it was covered over and then left until the modern day. And Klaus Schmidt went there in 1994, recognised that there were these stone fragments with carving on them that he saw in terms of a Neolithic culture, extremely old. He saw all of the stone tools scattered everywhere and realised that this was going to be a big archaeological excavation, and that if he didn't turn away now, he'd be there for the rest of his life, which is exactly, ironically, and sadly in some ways, exactly what happened, because obviously he worked there every year, twice a year. There was two different campaigns, one in the spring, one in the autumn, and he spent his entire life from that point onwards there at Gobekli Tepe, going back to Germany, obviously, in the winter months or in the high summer, to write up his work, do articles and whatever. And the rest of the time he lived in Schönlöfe, which is the city about 8 miles away from Gobekli Tepe. But, he was the guy that resurrected it from the dead, basically, quite literally. We have him to thank. He left behind one book, which is almost impossible to get. But what I've tried to do is to take all of the evidence that we have for Gobekli Tepe so far and show who constructed it, when they constructed it, why they constructed it, and the impact of Gobekli Tepe on myths and legends, on Hebrew myths and legends to do with the Watchers and the Nephilim, Mesopotamian myth and legend to do with the Anunnaki, and the Karsag, the place of origin of the gods, all this sort of stuff. And that's what I've tried to do in Gobekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods. And hopefully we can talk about some of this as we go through now.
Where does the funding come from? Is it all out of Germany for the research and the digging? Where's the money? Is anything coming from the United States? Are we throwing anything at it?
As far as I'm aware, most of the money is definitely coming from Germany. Some of it's coming from things like the Ministry of Tourism in Turkey. But just recently, only within the last year, a big oil mogul, a Turkish, has committed a very large amount of money to creating Gobekli Tepe as like this showpiece with this big umbrella-like roof, and making it a tourist attraction and a place that can be studied, well into the future. Now, the same person, I haven't got his name, I'm afraid, also put money into Çatalhöyük, which is the big Neolithic city complex in southern central Turkey, and that worked out okay. So, I think it's going to be all right there. I think I think it's going to be fine. I don't think we're going to have, market stalls all the way up to the enclosures and all the rest of it. I mean, it's going to be. It will become much more tourist orientated. For the first time this year, they've actually started to charge people to go in there. I mean, not a lot, sort of $10 or something like that. Which, I mean, if it's going towards, the restoration of the place, more digs, who cares? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I would think, and this is just me, but I would think that all of the foundations and stuff that we do here in the United States, that, and if I was the president, I'm serious. I would throw a bucket load of money at Gobekli and get that excavated as quickly as possible. I mean, not only it's human resources too as well. You need hands, but I would get digging. I would find out exactly how big it is, what else is there. I mean, there's only 4 circles right now, right, that are excavated.
For main structures. I mean, there is a large number of smaller structures, some of which are really interesting, but those are much younger than the 4 main enclosures that have been exposed so far, with all the beautiful carvings of the animals and these so-called anthropomorphic features. Because we should point out that the monoliths there are mostly T-shaped. In other words, they're like big letter T's.
Right.
And some of these monoliths are as much as 18.5 feet in height. And weigh 15 to 20 tons apiece, and are beautifully carved, beautifully, finished with carving, with right angle corners, everything. I mean, in a manner which, as I said, we only really associate with things like Egypt or Babylon or the Indus Valley, maybe, or certain other cultures around the world that were creating, sort of superstructures in the past. But as I said, this was going on several thousand years before the construction of the Great Pyramid and before the construction of Stonehenge.
Right.
I mean, that's the remarkable thing about it. And yes, I agree. We should be throwing more money at it. But the trouble is that I think, too much will be, will make it too much into a tourist place, and you may end up with a McDonald's close by. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that we have to leave it to the archaeologists to do their thing here. And as I said, the Ministry of Tourism in Turkey have basically taken over the site now. The excavations are still taking place, but they're going on to the northwest of the exposed enclosures so far. That's the scene as it is at the moment. And I mean, Graham Hancock first visited the site with ourselves last year. He was on the same tour as us. He came as a guest. And he was marvelled by the site last year. He went back recently, saw that they've now created this huge temporary wooden structure around it, complete with a roof. And he thought it was vile. I don't think so. I think it's fine. Yes, it's got a roof over it now. But if you go there at the right time of day, which is essentially late afternoon, early evening, it's beautiful there. The light comes in, it illuminates the stones. You feel connected with the place in a manner which I don't think you did when the whole thing was open to the elements. At that time, you could only look down on it and wonder and gaze. Now you can be a part of Gobekli Tepe. And that, I think, is actually quite important, particularly for people who are quite intuitive or inspirational and want to connect with the stones on maybe a psychic level or a visionary level. I think that's good. I think that, we need people like that to tell us what the hell was going on there 12,000 years ago. Because at the moment, it's speculation. I can speculate. What I speculate is that the main enclosures are almost like cosmic or representations of the cosmic womb, and that shamans would go in there. They would stand between these two great twin monoliths that are found in the centre of all the main enclosures, and project their mind in an altered state of consciousness north through this great hole in a stone that's set up in the side wall, you know, like an exit point, and project their minds into the cosmos via the local horizon, where exactly in line with the axis of the enclosures, they would have seen the setting of the bright star Deneb in the constellation of Cygnus, the celestial bird, also known as the Northern Cross.
Mm-hmm.
They would have seen that set exactly in line with this whole stone. They'd be able to watch that take place and project their mind. And this particular position in the sky, which corresponds also to the opening of something called the Great Rift of the Milky Way, which is where the Milky Way appears to split in two for a certain distance, that's been seen universally around the world in places like Mexico, Egypt, possibly in India and various other places, as the entrance and exit to the sky world, the place where life comes from and will return in death. The soul returns in death. It's basically seen as the sky world, the place where the ancestors lived, the place where the celestial beings inhabit. It's the place where supernatural creatures, you know, roam around and are encountered by the shaman, you know, who project their minds to, you know, into this otherworldly realm. And I think that's what the structures at Gobekli Tepe were created for. But what's more important is to try and understand why they wanted to do that in the first place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the best solution that I've come up with, based on the imagery on the stones, which includes a lot of foxes, a lot of wolves, and what appears to be symbols representing comets, is that they believed that the shamans had to enter into the sky world to deal with the supernatural forces, most particularly a sky wolf or a sky fox, which they believed was like a trickster that could bring about the destruction of the world through things like comet impacts and cataclysms and whatever. And that these people around 10,000 BC lived in fear that cataclysms would take place on a regular basis, that they would occur. And why did they believe this? Because a matter of a millennia beforehand and various other events coming, you know, within a few hundred years, possibly even to the very moment when Gobekli Tepe was constructed,
right,
there had been an impact event that had seriously affected the world. One involving a comet, which almost certainly came into the inner solar system, probably went round the sun, fragmented into thousands of pieces that were sent on a trajectory directly into the orbit of the Earth and hit the Earth, creating wildfires and firestorms across large swathes of the Earth. This created like an ash cloud that went up into the upper atmosphere, blocked out the sun and the moon for an extended period of the time, triggered a mini ice age, which lasted for 1,300 years, triggered also a downpour, which lasted probably for, I don't know, maybe 40 days, 40 nights, exactly as the Bible tells us that the flood of Noah took place. And all of this was something that was in the memory of the people of southeast Turkey at this time, and that I believe that something came into their midst, possibly peoples from another area, and said, look, we can stop this. We can help you. We can give you a remedy, a formula to stop what visionary writer Barbara Hand Clough referred to as catastrophophobia, the fear of cataclysm after, you know, one that had already taken place. We can help stop this catastrophophobia, but you must do what we say. And that involved the creation, the supersizing of these religious sanctuaries in a manner which we see today at Gobekli Tepe, creating the first stone circles anywhere in the world. That's what I believe was going on there. But then we start moving on to who these people were that came into the midst of the people that lived in southeast Anatolia, and the impact that all of this had on much later generations, those that would eventually be the founders of places like the Sumerian civilization, Babylonian civilization, and various other ones, the impact upon their world. And, in my opinion, I think that when this mini ice age was taking place, that there was a lot of migrations of peoples displaced from their own territories for either because of climate or because it was invaded by people, coming from some other part of the ancient world. And that people were moving about a lot. And I think that what happened is that roughly around 10,000 to 10,500 BC, at the height of this mini ice age, certain people, a group, an elite, entered into southeast Turkey from the north. I believe that they were part of a culture that archaeologists refer to as the Swiderians. Now, this may be a term that a lot of the listeners may never have heard of before, the Swiderians. And these people were the descendants of the earliest astronomers, the earliest worshippers of some kind of Earth Mother, the earliest miners. They had the most incredible stone tool technology. They were trading across hundreds of miles. They were an extremely advanced culture, the Swiderian peoples, and we know that they existed in an area that stretched from the Carpathian Mountains in the west right the way across central Russia, and that they were connected with a much earlier culture that goes back to 30,000 years ago. And so, in other words, they were almost like the high point of this culture. Mm-hmm. But amongst them were some very strange-looking dudes. Basically, they seemed to have been very tall, and they would seem to have had long heads. They would seem to have had elongated faces, but also very strong brows, high cheeks, strong jaws. And the anatomical evidence we have for these people is that they were human hybrids. And I don't mean alien hybrids here. I mean that they were hybrids created from an admixture of Neanderthals, who are our distant cousins as human beings, and the anatomically modern humans that existed at the time that are generally referred to as Cro-Magnon people, that these were hybrids of the two. And that this gave them a mindset that was far in advance of their neighbours or other cultures. And they brought this advanced mindset into southeast Turkey, and that it was with this that they, created this environment, took over the show, and, brought people on board to create what we now know today as Gobekli Tepe.
Well, and pretty advanced thinking, considering Orthodox archaeology is going to tell you that at that time, we were running around digging in dirt for seeds and grub worms for food and had zero intelligence, that
idea, I think if it still exists, people just forget it, because that's not the way things were 12,000 years ago. I mean, the people that were around then were as intelligent as you or I. But added into the mix here is the Neanderthal. And those people, let's call them people, are considered thick. They are shown, hunched over. Their faces look like they haven't got a lot of intelligence. But the more we find out about the Neanderthal, the more we realise that these people were extremely advanced. They may well have even created the earliest beliefs in the stars, moon worship, and what we call women's mysteries, witchcraft, fairies, paganism. A lot of these more dreamy ideas of life may actually have come not from our own human ancestors, but from the Neanderthals, and that the admixture, the bringing together of us and them, created something very special indeed. And these hybrids eventually watered down, genetically, and they're us today. But they are us. Within us, we have the DNA of both Neanderthals and anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens. There's only a very, very small amount of Neanderthal DNA left in us, but essentially it's still there within us. We still have the mindset, not only of our own Homo sapiens, but also of the Neanderthal as well. Now, a lot of these ideas, I must point out, were actually voiced in the 1980s and 1990s by an incredible writer by the name of Stan Gush. And if you've not read any of his books about the Neanderthal, go out and get them, after you've obviously bought Gobekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, of course. Do check out Stan Gush's books. Quite extraordinary. And he's been proved right again and again. But anyway, let's not sidetrack too much, because we need to look at the impact of Gobekli Tepe. What was its impact on later civilizations?
Well, let's start here. How, as you have worked on this and researched, how did they get the stones carved? And we can also talk about Karahan Tepe too, because that apparently was probably the quarry. But before we get into that, how did they get the stuff carved? Because when you look at the early Bronze Age, and certainly the earliest kingdoms of Egypt, where copper tools were used, but that was 3300 BC, 3200 BC. We're talking 7,000 years before that. So, how did they get that stuff carved? They weren't, and I say it all the time, they didn't do it with chicken bones. And there's two answers I need to get out of you. The reliefs on the T-pillars that we are talking about are in 3D, and that is very advanced artistic thinking, very advanced. And so, how did they get those reliefs carved? With or without metallurgy? Did they have something that nobody knows about?
No, I don't think so. I think that they used stone tools, but I think that they were, exactly as you said, extremely advanced in their stone carving capabilities. I think it's important to point out that the rock they used wasn't like the hardest in the world. It was local limestone, and experimental archaeology has actually shown that the bas reliefs, the high relief that you see on a lot of the stones is quite easily replicated. You can probably create one of those foxes in a couple of days. But you're right. Some of it's 3D. And what I mean by 3D is they created the stones and they actually then carved down the stones to allow the creation of 3D animals on the edges of some of the stones. Now, this was certainly unique to the period. Obviously, 10,000 BC, but it's not unique in the world. You find very similar carving going on in places like Costa Rica, in Peru and Bolivia, almost certainly, other places on the American continent. There are other places in the world. That particular style is not beyond human capability. And the fact of the matter is they did it, but it's a case of why they did it and where this knowledge came from to allow them to achieve this at such an early age. And clearly it must have come from a period much earlier. And what I show is that these Swiderians, they were a branch and part of the same family that produced another extremely advanced culture that inhabited Western Europe much earlier, known as the Solutreans. Now, the Solutreans are really, really interesting people. Firstly, the so-called Solutrean hypothesis suggests that Solutreans actually got in boats and came across to the North American continent as early as 20,000 BC. And that they may even have been the precursors of the Clovis people, who who actually existed probably around the time of Gobekli Tepe, but obviously in North America.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I mean, I do mention it. But the important thing about the Solutreans is that they were carving stone blocks, I mean, with beautiful designs in high relief of animals 20,000 years ago. So that's several thousand years or 8,000 years before Gobekli Tepe. In other words, they were using the same stuff. They were getting some practice in to create this type of monument. And what they were doing is they were getting large blocks of stone, flattening them and then creating these bas reliefs or high reliefs on them. And they were then standing them up within caves in like horseshoes so that they could do their rituals and ceremonies within that space. Mm-hmm. And this is in places like southern Spain, and France, places like this. So they were doing that. In other words, what you see at Gobekli Tepe, although it's far more refined, it certainly existed before this time. And the Solutreans, I think, were one of these branches of this same human hybrids that end up coming into southeast Turkey. In other words, there is a relationship here, and that they're somebody else that should be looked at very closely in the future. But anyway, the impact, I think we need to talk about this because, I mean, firstly, we must look in terms of the Hebrew traditions. Obviously, the stories in the book of Genesis. Here we're told about the stories of the sons of God coming upon the daughters of men and producing these giants known as Nephilim. It's a story that appears also in the book of Enoch, a very, very strange book, the oldest versions of which have been found within the Dead Sea Scrolls, and probably dates to sort of something like 200 BC. But here the story is elaborated a lot more, and basically what it said is that these sons of God were like the earliest angels. They're described as almost like human angels. They've got no wings. I mean, they seem to be quite corporeal in nature. Right. And they're described as extremely tall, with long faces like vipers or snakes. They have these very powerful eyes, and they said to come, upon the daughters of men. Same sort of story, who produce these giant offspring called Nephilim. But what's interesting here is that the Watchers who descend or rebel against those that are loyal to heaven, that's the story, reveal to humankind, mortal kind, that's us, the arts and sciences of heaven. And a lot of these are the first for humanity that take place in the area of Gobekli Tepe around 9 to 10,000 BC, and or gradually occur in that area in the millennia that follow. In other words, is it possible that these human angels, these Watchers, as they're referred to, are a memory of the Gobekli builders and the culture responsible for it? Maybe even these Swiderian people, who we know were extremely tall, strange-looking guys with elongated faces. Is it a memory of them? I think the answer is yes. But there's more, because the Watchers are said to wear cloaks of feathers, dark iridescent feathers, and they're referred to as birdmen, and they're able to fly occasionally. Now, this has all of the attributes of the shaman or the shaman. And we know that one of the biggest cults associated with the beginning of the Neolithic, at the time when Gobekli Tepe was constructed, was the cult of the vulture. The vulture is a bird that was very much associated with death and rebirth in Southwest Asia, the area of Gobekli Tepe. And there is strong evidence of vulture shamanism at Gobekli Tepe and other sites in the region from the early Neolithic. So is it possible that these human angels, these Watchers, these human hybrids were in fact the watchers of the Book of Enoch? I think the answer is yes. And moving on to the Mesopotamian myth and legend, we have the stories here of the Anunnaki. Now, the Anunnaki are the gods of heaven and earth, of the Sumerians, the Akkadians, and the later Babylonians and Assyrians. And it was said that they helped humanity create civilization. And it is said that the Anunnaki were born at a place called the Duku Mound. That's D-U-K-U. And this is like some kind of primeval mound. And it's located upon a mountain called Karsag. And it said that here they were born and here they lived. And here they gave humanity the first grain and the first sheep. Now, what does this mean? Well, the grain is agriculture, wheat, rye, barley, all of which we know occurred for the first time, the earliest agriculture in the area of Gobekli Tepe. In fact, something like 60, 68 modern strains of wheat that we use today for bread and for beer and for pasta and cakes can be traced back to a wild form of wheat that grows on a mountainside that's within sight of Gobekli Tepe. In other words, that's where the revolution began. The Neolithic revolution began within sight of Gobekli Tepe. So then we come to the sheep that the Anunnaki are supposed to have given humankind. What's this? Well, clearly this is animal husbandry. The first domestication of pigs and cattle and goats, and other animals that are now being kept in pens and fattened up, and used as meat and, for milk and obviously for their coats and whatever, their pelts. All of this began for the first time in the area of Gobekli Tepe around, probably around 9000 BC, plus or minus 500 years or whatever.
And this
all
is where
of these occurred.
This is where I need to jump in, though, and I need to really stress the impact of all of this. You're stating the facts, which is great, but the point that needs to be made from all of this is that agriculture, farming, organization, societies in general weren't supposed to be existing at this time. And in order for Gobekli Tepe to have been built to begin with, you need to have all of that social structure in place, because it took a lot of guys to build Gobekli Tepe. You needed to have the organization, and somewhere on one of those hills, somebody had to had a farm to feed the guys that are digging, quarrying, carving.
Absolutely.
And that's the point that needs to be driven home, is it wasn't supposed to have existed at that time. And Gobekli Tepe shows us all that we had farming, we had organization, we possibly had a religion, we had a government, we had a leader, we had schools, we had architects, we had all of that. Not only that, but astronomy is probably going to come into play too with Gobekli Tepe. And that what needs to be really driven home. And I don't want that point missed for all of our listeners. It's very, very, very important. And it's rewriting history.
Absolutely. And I mean, those villages were there. I mean, Gobekli itself, Gobekli Tepe, nobody lived there. It was purely a sanctuary. Obviously, there was maintenance there. There was building construction, the rest of it that were going on. Presumably, it was a place of pilgrimage as well. People would probably be able to go there and celebrate, and rituals and ceremonies at certain times of the year. Let's assume that. But what's important to point out is that when Gobekli Tepe was first created, the entire region, the entire world, essentially, were hunter-gatherers. That their whole lifestyle revolved around, the chase, the hunt, providing for their immediate family and their social group. They were semi-nomadic. That there were obviously temporary places where they would stay for a few months, maybe before moving on, following the herds. This was their lifestyle. It was a very free lifestyle, and yet something changes to bring all these people together, hundreds, if not thousands.
That's my point. Yes.
For the first time. And I think that is the fear of further cataclysms, and that something bad had happened in the world that brought people together essentially for the first time. I mean, en masse.
You know what you're saying, though, Andrew? What's really funny? That's the fear back then. You know what the fear today is Orthodox archaeology is that the proof of organization, farming, cities, towns, religion, government that happened 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years before they say it happened. And I just love it. And the Gobekli Tepe is just proving everybody, you guys are wrong. We've been trying to say this. Us on the fringe have been trying to say this for a long time. Lost civilizations and things are older than we know. And you know what? Gobekli Tepe just comes along, and guys like you can just literally throw your thumbs up at these guys and go, you guys have been wrong.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's there, and my prediction would be that there are other Gobekli Tepes around the world, that they were constructed around this time. Maybe some of the places we already know, maybe Gunung Padang in Java, Indonesia, maybe Pumapunka in Bolivia, maybe the Sphinx, maybe people like Dr. Robert Schoch, a colleague of mine, is correct.
Yep.
Who knows? I mean, that's a matter of speculation, which we can continue, right into the night, so to speak. But this is the smoking gun. Gobekli Tepe is the smoking gun. There is no argument about what's going on here.
None.
And I do believe that there are going to be other structures like this around, which we're going to start finding, and not even necessarily in southeast Turkey. I think you'll find stuff coming up in the area of the Caucasus, probably in the area of southern Russia, and probably in other parts of Europe, probably Central Europe. And east into Central Asia and Eastern Asia. I mean, remember, only a matter of 3 or 4 years ago, archaeologists, prehistorians, geneticists found evidence of a brand new type of human being called the Denisovans, or that's what they're called today, in a place called the Denisova Cave in the Altai region of Siberia. And this is, so now we've got Neanderthals, we've got, modern Homo sapiens, that's us. We've got Denisovans, and they've also found genetic evidence of a fourth type of human that they haven't got any anatomical evidence for. They only got the DNA evidence from other bones, that there's part of an admixture that they know existed. They don't even know who they were at all. I mean, I call them species X when I write about them, and they could be aliens. Who knows? I doubt it.
That's right. But
so what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of evidence of high culture coming out, which seems to have its origin in hybridization from a much earlier period, and that goes back to 30 to 50,000 years ago. That's, I think, when all of the changes really began. That's when us as human beings really started taking over the show in places like Europe and Central Asia. But of course, we came into a landmass which was already inhabited by other types of people, by the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, and whoever. And we need to start understanding what happened when all these people came together, because the result of that ends up being Gobekli Tepe, and Gobekli Tepe kickstarts civilization. And, you know, the rest is history, as they say. Now, it has to be.
You know, and this is the funny thing. And then we'll take a break, but when we come back after the break, I want to talk about some fun stuff about Gobekli Tepe. I mean, what you think is great, what I think is great, and a couple of really cool things. And we've got a gallery up right now on Gobekli Tepe. So if you go over to jimmychurchradio.com, everybody, and Andrew, if you want to do the same thing and go over to jimmychurchradio.com, and we can discuss some of these pictures that are up, and a couple of them are favorites of mine. But is the thing is, what's it, you know, I want your hard opinion on this right now, and you can go south on me if you want. But here we have Gobekli Tepe. I mean, what is it going to take to get everybody to wake up? And I'm talking about archaeology, to wake up and start teaching the real stuff and start talking about the real stuff. What's it going to take? Well, are we going to have to find like an automobile buried somewhere, a 10,000-year-old?
You know, I think people have to accept that change comes very slowly in the world. And people like myself, you know, Dr. Robert Schoch, you know, Graham Hancock, John Anthony West, Robert Bouval, you know, and many of my other colleagues, you know, are trying to shout from the, you know, the treetops and tell everybody about all of this. And, you know, we're getting somewhere, I think, now. You know, the reviews of our latest books are quite good in magazines. You know, the conferences are more sensible but well attended. You know, things are changing here. I do feel a paradigm shift going on. And I suppose I should plug the fact of the Paradigm Conference in October 4th and 5th in Minneapolis, which I shall be talking there, along with Graham Hancock, John Anthony West, Eric von Daniken is there. You know, a lot of these things will be talked about there. Following week, I'm in Virginia Beach for the ARE, the Edgar Cases ARE conference, Ancient Mysteries conference there. You know, there's a lot going on, you know, and, well, you know, it's no longer interested. Come along to some of these conferences. I mean, obviously we can say, read the books, you know, but if you really want to do something actively, come along to the conferences, listen to what people have got to say, and do something yourself about it. I mean, there's all these sites out there. You can go and visit them. You know, that nobody's stopping you doing your own research. And something like Gobekli Tepe, nobody has the answers yet. We can speculate. I can speculate. My colleague can speculate. But you might see something that everybody else has missed. And that could be the key to unraveling the purpose and function of places like Gobekli Tepe.
You know, and it allows you, it's a bullet for your gun, Andrew, and for Hancock and for Schoch and for John Anthony West.
Hello.
It's a bullet in the gun, where now you can sit down with some modern Orthodox archaeologist and sit, well, okay, but dude, what about Gobekli Tepe? You know, and pretty much just shut them up. And you didn't have that before 1995, you know, and I firmly believe, you talk about paradigm shift, game changer, and that's Gobekli Tepe for me. When you walk around Gobekli Tepe on the site, is it some of the tools and some of the things that are found there, or is it, you know, some of the carvings that really changed you? Well, what was it? Oh, did we lose Andrew? Oh, whoa. Let me double check. Yeah, I think we did. All right. I'll call him right back, and we'll get him set back up. Let's go ahead and it's a good spot. We were going to take a break anyway. Talking to Andrew Collins, live from the UK, and we'll reset everything when I get back. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. When I come back, we'll reset with Andrew and find out what is the coolest thing about Gobekli Tepe for him. I've got mine. I'll be back right after this. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com.
JJCR in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, I think we've got things reset here. I think we got to reset. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You want to hashtag DM RadioNet, by the way. And there you go. All right, let's see. See if we got Andrew still here. Andrew, are you with us?
I am, yes.
Okay, reset. Yeah, you just disappeared. You got to love technology. You know, you're over in London, we're here, and the fact that we can do this and you sound like you're sitting right next to me is an amazing thing, but once in a while. All right, did you pull up our Gobekli Tepe gallery?
I did, yes.
All right. One of the I would like to go through this one at a time because you've been there, I haven't. But what I'm looking for, I'm scrolling through right now. I'm looking for my favorite pick, my favorite thing about Gobekli Tepe, which is that belt buckle. Now, the 3D relief of the cheetah or whatever that is, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But for me, again, it's the belt buckle, and I don't know if I've got it up here. No, I just went through the whole thing. Okay. Well, I don't have the belt buckle up here. But when you look at the belt buckle, for me, you know, you hit the nail on the head. We're supposed to be hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be designers of clothing, you know, a belt.
Well, true.
But
as I said, we're talking about a very advanced culture coming in here. These Swiderians, they had tailored clothing as early as 30,000 years ago. They had agriculture 30,000 years ago. They had a fully developed mother goddess cult 30,000 years ago. They would even seem to have established the earliest astronomy that during that time. You know, they had their main totems, you know, for shamans was the wolf, the swan, and the reindeer. They were heavily into, you know, hunting reindeer, basically, which obviously all of these are really, really important magical symbols. And all of them can be associated with the night sky and the cosmos. All of them are associated with certain constellations. You know, so these people were extremely advanced. So by the time they get to Gobekli Tepe, they've been wearing tailored clothing for probably 20,000, maybe even 30,000 years. You know, this was not unusual at that time. I mean, in Gobekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, I do reconstruct what these people look like. And they look really interesting people. You know, I mean, they're wearing tailored clothing. Obviously, there's an ice age, so, you know, they've got hoods and things like this. They're really tall. They have these long jaws, but very heavy brows like the Neanderthals. I mean, they're really weird-looking dudes, to be honest. But, you know, these were the people that were around then. But anyway, I mean, let's have a look at some of your pictures then on the...
let's go to... let's just start in the top row.
Okay.
They're set up... okay, so everybody head over to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Very simple thing to do. And let's go through this. And again, you've been there. So... I want you to describe what you're seeing. Okay. I don't know what your favorite part.
The first picture I'm seeing is looking down into one of the enclosures. Well, that's actually enclosure C, and on the left you've got two pedestals with the remains of two large monoliths in them. The one on the left has a covering over it, a wooden covering over it, like a sort of packing case.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's to protect it from the elements, to, you know, ensure that it's preserved. But these stones originally would have stood 18 feet tall, probably, and they were set into pedestals, stone pedestals that were carved out of the living rock itself. And they were then slotted down into these holes, these rectangular slots within the pedestals. And they stood, and these face basically north-south. They're just off north, a little bit to the west of north. And that's the main access of these monuments. And most prehistorians that have looked at these that will consider astronomical alignments say that these are aligned to the stars. I mean, I say they're aligned to the north towards Cygnus and the Milky Way. Some of my colleagues suggest towards the south, towards places like Sirius or Orion or whatever. But it almost doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that stars seem to be connected with whatever's going on here. And that's important. But this, as I say, this is enclosure C. Some people suggest this is the oldest. And I mean, it's certainly constructed around 9,500 to 9,000 BC.
And let me ask you a couple of questions directly about this picture. The monolith to the right that doesn't have the wooden box around it, that is sitting in a slotted base as well.
Yeah. And that slotted base is not very deep as well. I mean, it's probably only around 12 inches deep. And you might say, well, how can you put a monolith that's 16 to 18 feet or something in there and keep it up? Well, they obviously put packing stones around it. And it is possible that there were roofs on these structures.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. I don't want to get ahead. We're going to talk about that in just a second.
What's so interesting about these slots is that they're clearly too large for the actual stones themselves. I mean, wide.
Right.
And I think there's a reason for that. I think there is a possibility that these stones were actually moved. In other words, they would be like it for a period of time, maybe 50 years or 100 years, and then they would be moved slightly. And I think this is a clear indication that they're facing towards the rising or setting of stars, because stars move along the horizon due to the process known as precession, which is a cycle of 26,000 years. So in other words, every 72 years, a star has moved an extra degree along the horizon.
That's correct.
So what this means, obviously, is that if you're pointing stones at them, you've either got to build a new stone or a new enclosure, or you can slightly realign the existing stone. So this is good evidence that these people were aware of precession. Now, that's incredible in itself.
It is. I barely understand precession today. And the rest of the world too, but it seems like with the Mayans and Gobekli Tepe, certainly the Egyptians too as well, were all very aware of precession, and that freaks me out. I mean, it's a 20,000 year plus cycle. How is it possible? How is it possible?
Clear astronomers are generally part of some kind of elite who pass on their knowledge from one generation to the next.
Absolutely.
And what happens is that the observations of one generation is passed on to the next generation, and it wouldn't take them very long to realize that stars move in relation to their setting and rising on the horizon. And I think that once that knowledge is there, then they'll be looking to see what the rate of change is. And within, I don't know, maybe 100 years, 200 years, they'll have sussed precession pretty quickly if they're intelligent, which we know these people were.
Well, yeah, but that what took a long time was each son, grandson was standing in one place looking up at the sky like every day of his life. That's the fascinating part.
Absolutely. That's what an astronomer priest does.
Every day. Now,
well, not about every day, but certainly regularly.
Now, back to this picture. I need you to answer a couple of questions. Again, you've been there, I haven't. The stacked stones that are in between the pillars, were those added later to make sure that those monolithic, the outside stones didn't fall over? Is that the intention there? Or were they done at the same time?
Okay, well, in theory, They are the original stones, and they were stacked exactly like that. However, obviously, when it was excavated, a lot of these stacked stones just tumbled down, so they've been reconstructed, which is why they look quite pretty now. But no, they are there. I mean, they've added a few walls here and there to support stones that were unstable. So it's difficult to look directly at what you see here and say, you know, that's as it was 10, 12,000 years ago, and that isn't. But yes, there was originally stone walls and benches, obviously, you know, coming away from the wall where people could sit down. But they have been reconstructed to some degree.
What's your theory on why they were T-pillars as opposed to just pillars?
Because the T part itself is the head, the abstract head of what they call an anthropomorphic figure.
A human.
In other words, these are meant to represent humans.
Right.
The T, the front part of the T, the projecting forward, represents the head and the face, you know, the projecting face and chin. The back part of the T, i.e. what projects backwards, is the elongated head, because it would seem as if the people that created Gobekli here were looking at their own ancestors and remembering the fact they had elongated heads. And this, I think, became very important to them, because I think eventually their descendants started deliberately deforming their heads with using linen and boards to try and look like their ancestors.
Are you jumping to a conclusion there, or do you have is there some kind of proof?
Of that. There's plenty of evidence that head elongation began roughly around the time of Gobekli Tepe in this region, and that the Swiderian peoples had what they called dolichocephalic heads. In other words, what that means basically is extremely long heads. Now, we might look at these people today and say, well, it's not that long, is it? But bear in mind that most of the rest of the world had what they called brachiocephalic heads, which is round heads. When they looked at these dudes with the long heads, they would have seen them as quite different. They would have seen them as almost, you know, serpent-like in appearance. And I think that it was the abstract memory of that creates the T shape in the stones that you see at Gobekli, but also the introduction of head deformation at a later point.
The monolith on the right, the freestanding one, the one that's not enclosed,
yeah,
it's chopped up on the top. Is that from the farmer?
No, what's happened there, and you'll see a crack along right the way through it as well, about halfway through. It's actually been reconstructed. One part has been, you know, basically, concreted back onto the other, or however they do it aesthetically. And what happened is that the weight of the hill bearing down of it, all the stones and rock debris and everything, crushed it. You know, as almost like a sort of very slow landslide is like, you know, pushing down incredible weight on those stones and turning them over. And a lot of them had to be re-erected. And this one in particular, they had to get a German engineering team in that did this very, very carefully over an extended period of time to re-erect it in the manner that you see here now.
So it fell over and the top broke off. The farmer isn't guilty of trying to chisel this one away.
No, I mean, what happened to the top of it? Who knows? I mean, it could have disappeared in antiquity. You know, in other words, around the time of its construction. I mean, because I think what's important to point out here is that these enclosures weren't all buried at the same time. They were buried very gradually over a period of, 1,500 to 2,000 years. In other words, when one particular enclosure would be seen to be outdated or no longer of any use, they would decommission it by filling it in. And this is, quite a regular practice with religious structures around the world. It still takes place, obviously, with churches. Churches are decommissioned. And in India, for instance, a Hindu temple, at the end of its useful life, lots of ceremonies and rituals have to take place in order that the spirits that rise up from it, are laid to rest. And I think that something similar was going on at Gobekli Tepe at the end of the useful life of each of the enclosures. But then what happened is around 8000 BC, the remaining enclosures, and we don't know how many of those there were, but the remaining ones were then all covered over and the people left the area.
Let's go to the next picture.
Oh, I've lost it 1 second.
Okay, not a problem. We're looking at one of the...
okay, I can see it, yeah.
Okay, one of the T-pillars with 3D relief. And again, this shows extreme intelligence. I mean, extreme. I can't imagine what proof somebody needs for an advanced culture and civilization than something like this. And I always point to, I don't want to sound trivial with this, but that belt buckle, just threw me. And it was out of everything at Gobekli Tepe. It's just like, what more do you need than something like this? And for you, what was it for Gobekli? There's one thing in Gobekli Tepe that you would show to anybody and go, look, this is extremely advanced intelligence. For me, it's that belt buckle. What is it for you?
It is to me. That particular pillar you're describing, which is pillar 18 in enclosure D, is the most sophisticated thing on site that they've discovered so far. And let me describe it to the listeners. I mean, it's a monolith that's 18.5 feet tall. T-shaped head. The T-shaped head is actually tilting slightly towards the ground, as if it's like, some kind of celestial being greeting the entrant who's coming up towards it. That's important, almost like it is a god. And you have the arms, which are like in relief, coming down from the head, bent, and then coming around the front of the front narrow side of the stone and ending in these long spindly fingers, and just below the hand, going right the way around the body, is a belt, and on that belt are a series of glyphs or ideograms, almost like very primitive glyphs that you might see amongst the Maya or the ancient Egyptians or something, and this terminates right in the front with a belt buckle, which is that is all it is. It's a belt buckle, and it's got a design on that which is like a U shape and a circle with 3 prongs going up. I think that circle, the 3 prongs, the U shape, is a representation of a comet. I'm dead certain of this. And below it, hanging beneath it, is a fox's pelt. Carved in stone, and the fox's pelt and the fox's tail are also symbols of comets in various cultures around the world. In fact, amongst certain peoples in Mexico, whenever a comet would appear, the priests would adorn themselves in the pelts of foxes and lions, because they believed that this was connected with the spirit of the comets. And even today, comets are often referred to as the fox's tail in the sky, because it's believed that they're the tail of a supernatural creature in the sky, like the Fenris wolf of Norse mythology, who brings destruction in the world and create cataclysms.
Why did they bury it? I've got my own theory. I'll lay that out, but I want to hear your. Your answer.
I think what's important to remember is that they were gradually burying it over a very long period of time. It wasn't all done at the last moment. They were creating a hill, quite literally. And this happens, all the way around the world. They create what's known as an occupational mound. It's known, for instance, in Egypt in Arabic as a tell, right? A T-E-L, T-E-double-L. In Turkish, it's known as a hoyuk or a tepe. And essentially what this means is it's like a sort of layered cake of human activity. And when one particular period is over, maybe there's a fire or something like this that destroys part of it, they'll cover it over and then build on top. And this is what was going on at Gobekli Tepe, because some of the structures are built on the bedrock, clearly the oldest, and they're actually carved into the bedrock, like enclosures C, which you've just seen, and enclosures D, which we've just been talking about now. And yet others at the top of the mound are 15 meters, 45 feet higher, and they're built, and the structures there are much younger and much smaller, clearly built maybe as much as 1,500 years later. So that's the layering. So it's wrong to look at the fact that the mound is constructed all at one time at the end. It's gradually constructed, and I think what was happening is that the enclosures were probably being decommissioned every 100 or 150 years, probably because their stones no longer aligned with the stars that they were built to point towards, and they couldn't move the stones anymore, so they gave up. They decommissioned them or killed them ritually, and opened another one, built another one, and constructed another one on the site, either at the same level or at a higher level. And then at the end of it, the remaining ones, they did cover over and they left. Why did they do that? Well, maybe there was a change in the world. Maybe they just had no further need to construct monuments like this anymore. Now the Neolithic revolution had happened. This was gradually now going to spread out into the rest of Turkey, into Eastern Europe, Central Europe. It was going to go east into Central Asia, south eventually into India and, Indus Valley and the rest of it. The revolution had begun. Maybe there was no longer any need. Maybe there was no fear anymore about cataclysms occurring.
Or possibly there was a cataclysm that was about to happen, and they needed to save it.
That's the theory of my colleague, Dr. Robert Schoch. He sees solar events as possibly responsible, coronal mass ejections of, solar flares coming out, and they're having to cover it over quickly. It's a nice idea, but I'm afraid that I can't see evidence of that at Gobekli Tepe yet. If it comes up, I'll stick up my hand and say, Robert Schoch was right.
Well, I think there's something else to it. I really feel like they wanted to show us today what they had back then, and they wanted to literally time capsule the situation.
Well, that's a good point, and I think what's also important is the fact that if you can imagine this mountain ridge with this artificial hill on it, which is about, and I'll have to do it in meters, about 300 by 200 meters. So if you can convert that just to yards, you'll be quite close. And it's about 15 meters, that's about 45 feet high. And this is in an earth which is not natural to the top of this mountain. All of this earth and debris had to be brought to the spot. The earth itself would have come from the valleys below.
Right.
And that would have taken a hell of a lot of work. Hundreds, if not thousands of people involved in this. And, at the end of it, what have you got left? You've got something that looks like a belly, something that warrants the name Gobekli. The word Gobekli means navel, or some people describe it as belly-like. And that's the symbol of a womb, of creation, of birth, of rebirth, and obviously, the whole, female cycle. And when you actually look at the enclosures, it's very tempting to look at their shape and say that they represent the womb of of a woman.
The start of it all.
Yeah. I mean, and that these people believe that for some reason they had to go back into the womb to somehow access the cosmic womb. In other words, the womb that everything has come from, the world itself has come from. And I think that this is something that eventually comes down to us via places like ancient Egypt in the concept of the coffin, the sarcophagus, the tomb. All of these are representations ultimately of the cosmic womb, and that we have to go back into that to rejoin the ancestors in, whatever you want to call it, the sky world, heaven, the other world, the underworld, any of these things. But it's also remember the place that we come from in the first place.
There's something here that I just have to get out, and I really hate when people do comparisons to movies when they talk about subjects like this. But there's something that is almost undeniable, which is in 2001 with Stanley Kubrick with the monolith on the moon, and that one scene, and where I'm trying to think of the actor's name right now, but when they're cruising over to the dig site on the moon, and he says, "Well, it appears to be deliberately buried." And he goes, "Deliberately buried? Well, okay. I want everybody to think of the impact of that in 2001 and Gobekli Tepe. I'm not saying it's E.T. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is deliberately buried. Deliberately buried. What is the impact of that, and why did they do it? And I really honestly think they were trying to time capsule it. They were just merely preserving it to show us later, and I'm saying it was discussed. It was planned. It was deliberate. It wasn't, hey, the rains are coming. We got to get out of here, so let's fill this in with dirt and garbage and move on to something else. We can't grow our crops here. Let's go somewhere else where we can get to some fertile land. I'm not saying it was anything like, I'm saying it was discussed and planned and buried deliberately for us now today. And look what we have today, and it is a paradigm shift.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, you could be right. And going back to 2001, I think what's important with that, and I mean, I've drawn this comparison in the book, because if you actually look at the monolith of 2001, it's almost exactly the same shape as the Gobekli monoliths. I mean, minus the T-shaped termination.
But it is freaky.
It's the same proportions, everything.
It is freaky. It is freaky.
But what I think is intriguing is that black monolith in 2001 was considered to be made of the volcanic glass known as obsidian. And obsidian is something that's found in abundance at Gobekli Tepe and would seem to have been one of the keys of magic and also trading from Paleolithic times down to the period of Gobekli Tepe and beyond. And I think that this was an extremely magical substance, and that whoever controlled the trading of it and the find sites, the places where it was discovered, on the sides of volcanoes and things like that, these were the people in control. And these Swiderian people I'm talking about, they controlled the obsidian that in this region and in the Carpathians. This is what I show.
Are you able to make these connections?
Yes, it's all in the book. Yeah, okay. Yeah, completely.
Let's go to one of the. There's two images in the bottom row, the two star maps and the constellation. So let's go down. I want everybody to click on the third picture in the second row of the gallery, which show now. And when you look at this, is this the first thing I want to say is it could be an accident. It could be. You could twist around and adjust a star map to almost to fit anything if you wanted to. So is this done by chance, or do you feel pretty solid about jumping to this type of conclusion?
Well, I think that the person that's connected the different images with the stars are in the right general locality. Absolutely. I mean, what is shown on the right in blue is what's known as the Great Rift of the Milky Way, where the Milky Way splits in two, and right at that spot, I mean, obviously I can't point to it, is the stars of Cygnus, the cross, the Northern Cross there.
Mm-hmm.
And the brightest star there is Deneb, and the other stars, the other two big stars very close to it, they're all connected with cosmic birds. 2 out of 3 of them are associated with the vulture. And I think he's in the right track. I mean, let me send you some of my own versions of this because, you know, but the one thing he has got wrong is the Scorpion, which he's associated with some stars beneath the Milky Way. That's wrong, in my opinion. That Scorpion, and I wouldn't be the first to have said this, archaeoastronomers have said this, that's Scorpius, that's our Scorpio. And that's actually placed on the Milky Way itself. So that whole thing needs shifting around about 90 degrees in a anti-clockwise direction for it all to be correct. But full credit to the person that's done it. They're in exactly the right area of the sky.
Yeah, it doesn't look to me to be an accident. You know, I hate to jump so far ahead and to come to this, but it just doesn't seem like it's by accident. It's definitely done by intent. And
well,
if you look at jump to the next one to the right.
Yeah.
And tell me
see, here's where we can actually see some names and the rest of it. Right in the center of the star map on the right, by the letter B, just beneath it is the star Deneb, which is the brightest star in Cygnus, the Swan, and just beneath that is a white area. That's the opening of the Great Rift. This is the entrance and exit to the sky world in cultures around the world, because it's believed that this channel, this white channel that you can see here, which is actually caused by debris in line with what's known as the galactic plane, creates like this sort of what appears to be like a sort of channel down the center of the Milky Way that eventually opens up in the area of Sagittarius and Scorpio. And I think this is all very, very important because this was seen as almost like a cosmic birth canal in the past. I mean, it's there within the whole Maya tradition, for instance. The ancient Egyptians saw the Milky Way as a goddess known as Nuit, and her vulva and cosmic womb was in the position of Cygnus and the the Great Rift, or Dark Rift as it's known. You know, this is the place. This is the exact spot where creation was considered to have come from. But once again, you know, the person's got the stars slightly cocked up. I would say that the whole thing needs to be twisted about 90 degrees for it to be right.
Oh, really? Well, if you twist it 90 degrees, and that would bum me out, because if you look at B and you look at the position of the Swan, and you look how they have the Milky Way positioned here, the Swan's feet or legs are the Great Rift. And that would be a wonderful thing if it, well, you know, here it's lined up correctly.
Okay. Look, the way to look at this is look at the actual stone itself, and obviously I do hope that the listeners are following this. But if you have a look at this stone, which is basically known today popularly as the Vulture Stone, you have towards the bottom, I mean, obviously there are various birds on here, but you have a scorpion, which is marked as E, and then beneath it you have the head of a bird, which could be a vulture, with an F on it. And just on the back of that vulture, there is a headless figure. So where is his head? Well, to find his head, we have to go I just lost the picture. We have to go up to the vulture. Let me just get it back here. That has its arms outstretched with what appears to be a football or soccer ball,
right,
being bounced on his wing.
Yes.
Well, that is the head of the individual below, because the people in the early Neolithic represented the skeleton as a headless body, and they represented the soul or spirit that rose from that as either a ball with, a couple of eyes and a nose and a mouth,
right,
or simply a ball itself.
Right.
So
right.
what this picture's saying is that the skeleton, which obviously let's assume is on Earth, is at the base, and that the soul is rising up and is now under the care of this scorpion, who seems to have it on his wing. The vulture, I'm sorry, the vulture that has it on its wing, that vulture is a symbol of Cygnus. An Armenian scientist worked out that this was the exact shape of the Cygnus constellation as it looked in around 9,500 BC. And I concur completely with this. This shows the Cygnus constellation, and it shows it in a position of where the soul ends up. And I mean, all right, there's various other features on this which will be here all night, but the scorpion is the constellation of Scorpius or Scorpio, and it's about the journey of the soul from its terrestrial or earthly environment up into the sky and reaching Cygnus, which marks the entrance or exit into the sky world in the position of the Milky Way's Great Rift.
At the top of this pillar, you have those three objects that look like purses or some type of.
Yeah.
What do you think those are?
Okay, well, some of my colleagues believe that they are what's known as manbags, which are shown being held by Babylonian genii, or gods or whatever. And they're represented around, maybe that they contain their stash of drugs or something like that. I don't think so, because in this instance here, there are little animals by the side of them. And I believe what they probably show is pens of animals. They're little houses of animals with little pens in front of them. And I think what they probably are meant to represent are houses almost like zodiacal houses, as we would know today, the 12 different signs or whatever. Somehow they represent something that's in the sky, probably segments of the sky that are associated with different animals. Below that, you can see what appear to be like a row of zigzags.
Up and down V's.
Yeah, and then below that, a line of squares.
Yes.
And then more zigzags beneath them. What I believe this shows is some kind of walkway over water, and that the V's are actually meant to represent the passage of water. But beneath that walkway, such walkways were created in Neolithic times, and there's no doubt about that. And I think there's a possibility that this is meant to represent the Milky Way, which has been universally seen as like a river of souls around the world, and that's what it's meant to represent here, some kind of river associated with the birds, which are, so frequently seen on this particular stone.
I don't have any pictures here. I should have posted it, but there's some Sumerian carvings too that look very similar to those purses.
Right. Well, yes, absolutely, yeah. But as I said, the context is different because they're actually being held by people, so there can be no doubt that they are manbags, if you like. Here, there's nobody holding these at all. The fact they've got small animals next to them tends to suggest that they're animal pens, to me, in my opinion. But this is why I said earlier on, people can make their own mind up. They may have clues here that everybody else has missed. There's lots on offer here at Gobekli Tepe. We don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers, certainly not the archaeologists, which is why anybody can step in at any point, and take this matter on to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. Everything should be on the table here. We need to, I don't care how whack and how out there anybody's opinion or theory may be with Gobekli. Speak out, put it on the table, let's discuss it, because we really don't know. I wish there would have been some type of written language or something else. Who knows what we might find. Let's go to the next picture, which has the blue night sky in the background. Yeah. This is one of the greatest pictures of Gobekli, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is so majestic. Tell me what you see when you look at this picture.
Well, the stone that you see is actually the 18.5 feet monolith that we've been talking about in enclosure D. You can see, obviously, the T-shaped head. It's slightly angled down. Can you see that towards the right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's so that when people are approaching it, it's almost looking down at them, like greeting them in some manner or acknowledging their presence. Because the manner of approach would be from the right, which was from the south. But then you have these lines coming down, which represent the arms. So they're like bent arms, and within the elbow area, you can see this leaping fox, and this shows, I think, control over this particular animal. What it shows is that the individual that's being represented here, who I think is probably meant to be some kind of great ancestor of the Gobekli builders, has control over this particular totemic animal, the fox, the sky fox. And remember, on the front narrow edge of this particular stone, we have this belt buckle that you've earlier described,
mm-hmm.
which I think represents the comet, which is seen as a sky fox, a trickster, and you've also got the fox pelt loincloth as well on it. So the fox is really emphasised on this particular stone, and there's been a lot of remains of foxes found at Gobekli Tepe as well, which suggested to Professor Klaus Schmidt and a colleague of his who's expert on, animal remains found at sites, that some kind of cult or religious reverence of the fox was definitely going on here. And I absolutely think that's absolutely bang on. The fox, particularly the Arctic fox, is one of the key symbols associated with this earlier culture, the Swiderian culture and their ancestors. In a number of their graves of their ancestors, the teeth or claws or bones of Arctic foxes were found. This seems to have been a very, very important animal seen in association with the sky world.
Were all of the animals indigenous to this part of Turkey, or was there something there that shouldn't have belonged?
It's difficult. I mean, when I first saw a lot of these animals, I thought that they looked like something which shouldn't be in this area. But the more I read, the more I realise that they probably were indigenous. But what I think is important is that the people who were constructing these, their ancestors came from other parts of the world, and they may have a memory of animals which were important in their myths and legends, folklore, that they were bringing to the fore here. So they were then connecting them with a local variation, a local species. But what we do see at the base of this actual pillar that we're showing here now is a line of 7 birds which are on the pedestal right at the base, which are usually interpreted as ducks, but this is wrong. I mean, they're clearly not ducks. In fact, they look like baby dinosaurs.
I was going to say that a few times. I was going to try.
Yeah.
I meant to bring that up. Do you think? I know that's.
But they're not baby. No, they're not baby dinosaurs. I'm pretty certain that they are a species of Dodo, a creature which, in its own right, has been extinct for 350, 400 years, and obviously was only found on an island in the Indian Ocean. But it's quite likely that some of its, some other species of the same genus were seen by people associated with the construction of Gobekli Tepe. Now, whether this was in southeast Turkey or some other part of the ancient world, we don't know, obviously. But I think that they are a form of Dodo.
When you go to the last picture in the row, which shows everything covered in cloth and protected, but there was one thing, and I brought this up maybe a year ago on this show. I think I brought it up with shock, actually, which is one of the things when I look at this picture, and for everybody, it's the last picture in the bottom row. When I looked at all of these different circles and looked at how these were arranged, I immediately jumped to one thought, which is it looks like they were with the angles of the heads on the T-pillars. It looked to me like there should be a roof here. It looks Colosseum-like. Not Colosseum is the wrong word. Modern arena type. For a farm, possibly, a wood roof. Yeah. It looks like it's set up completely for the spars, the ceiling joist, if you will, to connect into the middle and cover it with a roof. I have since heard this theory kind of, get bounced around. But has there what's your theory on that, or what's your thought on that, number one? Number two, has there been any evidence of a roof or wood or anything to connect these pillars together on site, or is it just all stone at this point? It's just too old.
Okay. Well, there is evidence of grooves and cuts in the top of a number of stones in this particular circle, which is the inner circle of enclosure C. It also has an outer circle as well, which is just visible behind it, which actually is older. The one in the inside is thought to be younger, by the way. That's according to Professor Klaus Schmidt, which I think is probably right. And yes, there's evidence that there could have been a roof here. Others have said, well, maybe the slots and the grooves were to hang banners and things like that. And yeah, that's possible as well. However, when we come to enclosure D and that incredible 18.5 feet monolith we've been talking about, the slot into which that is placed is only about 8 inches in depth. Now, what this basically means is that anybody coming along and leaning on that stone, which was weighing anything up to 15 to 20 tons, could have pushed it over. Now, that absolutely makes no sense, even with packing stones around it.
Right.
I think that just as it is today, and it now has like a wooden frame around it, like an A-frame linking it to the ground and other supports, I think that it would have had to have had some kind of support in the past. And that does tend to suggest that we could be dealing with a roof. And that they did form part of it. But I don't think these roofs were permanent roofs. I think that probably they had some kind of infrastructure in wood that allowed them to put like skins or something like this over it at certain times of the year. Maybe in the winter, maybe in the high summer, who knows? But that the sense is that they could take them off, or that maybe only half of them were actually enclosed. And I think that these were quite organic, these these enclosures that they could have a roof on, they could have a roof off, or whatever. That's my sense. There's no absolute evidence here of permanent roofs. That's a fact. I mean, some people have proposed it, yeah, but there's no absolute evidence of this at all, really.
It looks it to me. My eyes are just it's begging for some type of permanent roof. I mean, that's just me.
It's possible, but as I said, you know, and also if you look at the grooves on the top of the stones, that they're not all uniform. That some are just like cut grooves on the top of them. Some are angled, whatever. There's some haphazardness going on here. It's almost like it's an afterthought.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to look at it. But they're definitely, man, I've said this so many times tonight, intentional. And now a quick question. This comes in from Renee via email. She says, please explain how humans of 12,000 years ago could have moved, let alone assembled, a tightly fitting structure with 20-ton stones.
Well, the fact of the matter is they did, and they must have involved hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And these are people that, in theory, are hunter-gatherers, because there was nobody else around at this time. I mean, you know, I mean, obviously you can start looking at more ethereal ideas of Atlantean priests and people moving stones, you know, through sound or something like this. But the hard fact of the matter is that they created these, and they were created 12,000 years ago. And I think that the only way you can do this is to have some kind of hierarchy. And the hierarchy would basically involve, you know, the people doing their thing, and some kind of elite who were seen to be, you know, almost representations of living gods in a way. And that they would have been in charge, in control, and they would have had taskmasters, they would have had, you know, managers, they would have had technicians, they would have had architects involved, they would have had shamans, astronomer priests, all the rest of it. There would have been a whole infrastructure of people, plus all their families, and, you know, plus all of the different villages where these people would have had to have been fed. You know, you are dealing with some kind of community here which would have involved several thousand people eventually. So the fact that they were actually able to move these, I don't think was a problem. I mean, you know, they did it. I mean, we still don't know how they moved the stones at Stonehenge, you know. So trying to work out what they were doing several thousand years earlier is going to be even more difficult to establish.
Yeah, totally. A tweet just came in. This is from Gene Vateau. He says, is it possible that the roof was in fact the Milky Way and sky elements?
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, you know, that's a great idea. You know, maybe it was, you know, covered, but this is what I say about it being temporary, because you could then remove it and see the real thing. So, you know, that's why I don't think that it was a permanent roof, because I sense that they would have needed to see the stars of the sky. I mean, everything about these enclosures is cosmological. It would seem as if the circles of stone were originally 12 in number, with obviously, you know, a 13th stroke 14th one making up the twin pair in the center. That's very cosmological, involving, you know, a 12-fold division of the sky based either on, you know, the sun passing through the different zodiacal signs, or of course the lunar calendar, which is obviously a 13-month calendar. And you've got the glyphs. The glyphs. You have this very thin C crescent, and to me, this represents the moon, either at the end of its cycle or the beginning of its cycle.
Yeah, I could see that.
And the way that they're placed together with a H, like this H shape in between, it seems that what they're showing is the end of one lunar cycle, the beginning of another, the two crescents facing each other, the H in the middle is a symbol which I interpret and give evidence that from around the world to show this, almost certainly represents the transition from this world, the terrestrial world, to the other world. And that in a way it's not a H shape, it's actually two T's joined together or two T's mirrored. It's the going from one world into the other, with the adjoining line representing that transition from here to there. So in other words, what it's actually saying, that symbol, is that we do our rituals at the dark of the moon, which is very, very interesting, because at the dark of the moon is when all the stars shine brighter than any other point of the month. And if you believe in astrology, the influence of the stars, or the influence of the electromagnetic radiation that comes from the stars, everything from cosmic rays to, radio, frequencies to X-rays or whatever, all of those would be heightened during the dark of the moon. And I think this is very, very important.
This question comes in from Lou. He says, have they excavated beneath any of the floor sections yet? That's a great question.
Well, obviously the bedrock is the bedrock, and whatever's actually carved into the bedrock is essentially going to be all that there is. However, some of the other structures have what's known as terrazzo floors. Now, what this is a mixture of limestone that's been powdered and burnt, mixed with other materials that then used almost like a type of concrete to create like a dead flat floor that's permanent. And it would seem as if these are the earliest evidence of terrazzo floors anyway. I mean, they're found eventually in other early Neolithic sanctuaries in southeast Turkey, and also in places like Cyprus and whatever. But, the earliest terrazzo floors are there. Now, if you broke through those floors, what would you find? Well, yes, you may find stuff carved into the ground, maybe pedestals, other features, but that's something which I think that they're not prepared to do at the moment, because it would just destroy the archaeology and it would be lost forever. So, something could be there. The other thing, which obviously begs the question of whether there is any caves in the vicinity. I mean, maybe there's caves in the bedrock. This has been voiced a few times. And there is a rumor, a story, which I can't quite pin down exactly, that a cave was found local to it, and some kind of crude rock art, maybe something like a bull skull or something was found here. I mean, allegedly, Professor Klaus Schmidt mentions this somewhere, but I've read all of his material. As much as I can get my hands on. I mean, that's at least 20 articles, papers, and his book, which I've got both in English and in German. And I can't find any reference to this. I would love to pin this down, this story.
Who's taking over for Schmidt? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I do know some of the archaeologists that work under him. Some of their views are different to Schmidt. Schmidt had quite fixed views on what he considered was going on at Gobekli Tepe. And these he repeats again and again in TV programs, obviously in articles and things like this. And I can tell you that some of his understudies did not accept what he said and have their own views. And why not? I mean, obviously, I don't know who's going to take over from him. I really don't know. I don't think it's anybody that's actually working there now. They'll probably bring in somebody else from the German Archaeological Institute to take over. But who that will be, I don't know.
With and you just touched upon something that I also want to talk about. I want to get back, if you don't mind, off of Gobekli Tepe. I want to talk about the caves underneath Giza. But before I let you go. I can't let you go without talking about that just briefly.
Okay.
Is there anybody using ground penetrating radar right now at Gobekli Tepe looking for caves? Is it something that is not being investigated?
It's not being investigated, really. I mean, Smith himself believed that there was an evolution at Gobekli. I mean, it's a fact that the biggest and the most sophisticated and the most technologically advanced enclosures at Gobekli Tepe are the oldest ones. That's a fact. And the more time goes on, the more simple the structures become, to eventually around 8,000 BC, they're barely any larger than a family bathroom.
Right,
The stones are now only about 4 or 5 feet tall. Yes, they still have the same anthropomorphic features. Occasionally they're carved, but it's almost like the impetus has been lost. So going back to those big, oldest, most sophisticated enclosures, Smith could not handle the fact that they were there and that there was no evolution up to this point.
Exactly.
So what he predicted, and both myself and Graham Hancock shake our heads and say this is not going to be found, is that he predicts that there's trial and error going back several thousand years at Gobekli Tepe somewhere that ended up with these grand structures. I don't think that is the case, because I think this knowledge came from elsewhere. It was not something that was a product of trial and error on the site. I do not believe this. This is very typical of an archaeological view, that they think that it's like the local people getting together and, well, what should we do? Let's make a little structure and maybe put a few stones to make a circle around it. And then they do another one and say, what should we do now? Let's make one slightly bigger. Do you know what I mean? And this happens over a period of several thousand years until eventually you've got the monuments. I don't think that that's the case. I think that those grand monuments at Gobekli were built because people believed they had to create them. There are catastrophe myths that talk about, after the cataclysm has gone and, the world comes out from the caves or the mountains or whatever, they build the first temples to honor the gods, to make sure that the gods don't do this again, or to appease them because they feel that they've done something bad. I find that very, very interesting. And I think that Gobekli Tepe is a product of a similar idea, that they felt they had to create Gobekli Tepe.
Do you feel, this may seem out there, but I just have to ask, do you feel an energy when you get there? Do you feel something? Is there another dimension I don't want you to go out on a limb. I'm just saying, when you get there, are you moved? Do you feel something there?
Not in the same way that I feel going to certain other sacred places. So it's not, okay. The way I feel when I get there is I get really nervous. I know this is very strange. I get really nervous when I arrive there, and I cannot get rid of it. It happens every time I go there. But when I get there, it's a flurry of activity, taking photographs, observing, doing this, speaking, blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly it's almost time to go. And it wasn't really until the very last time I was there, which was June. So just about 3 months ago, that with the new roof, that you're able to go inside and actually feel a part of it for the first time. And I feel that connection is being made now.
What do you mean nervous? What do you mean nervous?
I don't know. It's just very nervous.
Like
I don't feel it when I go anywhere else. It's almost like
you're not supposed to be there. You're breaking rules.
I think it's different. I think it's a case of, this is the mother lode. This is the big one. Don't mess it up. and which is an absurd thought in a way, because it's only just an archaeological site, but it does make me quite nervous going there. Whereas if I go to the ancient city of Haran, which is just a few miles away, which is a great ancient center of the Sabians, the Chaldeans, who themselves were astronomers, venerated the North Star, the moon, or whatever, and almost certainly, was created by the descendants of the people at Gobekli Tepe. I go there and I love it. I love arriving there. I look forward to it. But at Gobekli, it's different. And the other thing at Gobekli is that you look at the carvings and you feel different to look in any other carvings in the ancient world. What I mean by this is that if you go to Egypt, you feel a connection with the carvings, the beautiful hieroglyphs and the different frescoes and friezes. The same if you go, to Europe, to any other site or whatever. But they feel alien, and I don't mean this in an extraterrestrial sense, but I mean alien in a not human-like way. And the only comparison that you can draw, I think, is the carvings that you find in South America, in particular, in places like Ecuador and Colombia and Peru and Bolivia, which I'll happily admit I've not been to South America, but I've seen plenty of pictures of these, and it looks the same feeling. And obviously, at a lot of these places, a lot of blood was spilt, probably. And you get that same feeling at Gobekli Tepe that this is not necessarily a place that was always sweetness and light, if you get what I mean.
Right.
No evidence of human sacrifice or anything like that has ever been found at Gobekli Tepe yet, but it has been found at a few of the outlying sites that are associated with the same culture. That's all I can say. I mean, at the moment, as I said, no evidence of sacrifice has been found there. But I sense that this place was not always sweetness and light. A lot went on here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And that the 3D relief of the cheetah, when you look at the entire site, I mean, there isn't a bunch of that. There's only one. And you walk up and you just ask yourself, I mean, it's an obvious question. Okay, what the hell is this and why is this here? That was done for a reason.
Yeah.
And so why? I mean, the question is, why that cheetah? I think it's a cheetah. It looks feline to me.
It's considered feline.
Yeah, it looks feline. Why? I mean, that was done. That took somebody a long time to do. And
a lot of thought, a lot of thought,
because when you look at the pillar, you look at the T shape, the rock is removed to do it in 3D relief. Everything was planned in advance, and that was very, very, very important. Why the cheetah on that T pillar done in 3D? What was the intention? And how did it possibly survive, too? 12,000 years. How come that thing didn't fall off or chip off or fall to the side? Earthquakes, weather, and there it is, 12,000 years later, just sitting there nice and proud. What was the intention?
I have no idea, in all honesty. I mean, it's unnecessary. The stones themselves are supposed to be anthropomorphic. In other words, that they are ultimately statues of human figures, but in abstract form. So why would you need to have a creature like that crawling down the front?
Yeah, pointing to the ground
of your stomach, so to speak.
Yes.
And pointing towards the ground. I mean, I don't know. This is why I say the mindset of the people there is not the same way as we think now. And this is why I'm happy to entertain the idea that we're dealing with hybrids here who, may well have had, a brain chemistry that was perhaps slightly more Neanderthal. In other words, it's almost something that we can't really quite get to grips with ourselves, because we are not that type of human at all. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that's good. That's good that there are these mysteries that we cannot get a hanger on. I mean, if you go into virtually any religious structure around the world, you know, anything from a Hindu temple to a synagogue, a mosque, or a church, or whatever, you get the idea of what's going on there. You know, you enter, you go towards the Holy of Holies or the direction of prayer or whatever, and you know, any kind of feature makes sense to you. You know, you don't have to be told what's going on. But when you go into these places, it is truly alien. I mean, you know, and that is the big challenge. And that was the big challenge to me when I first went to Gobekli Tepe in 2004 and gazed down at the stones, which at that time were only half uncovered, many of them. And I just thought, I need to get inside of the minds of the people that did this. I need to do this somehow. And that's been my challenge over the last 10 years. Even though obviously I've been following the subject since it was first announced, the discovery of Gobekli in the year 2000. And also I've been working on that particular culture and its impact on the Watchers and the Anunnaki since the early 1990s. And my book, From the Ashes of Angels, talks all about this, but of course without the presence of Gobekli Tepe. That was almost like the smoking gun that proved everything that I was talking about.
Have you, wow, I wanted to get to those caves at Giza, but this is the other thing. I think, I feel it in my bones, Andrew. There are probably some rooms there. You know, that's why I was asking about the ground penetrating radar. I can't imagine all of those stone circles not being interdispersed with square rooms. That's what I feel, and I think there's more there. And I don't know why they're not using ground. I mean, like right now, looking for evidence of that. I would think that there would be some type of room and doors. And that's the one thing that is lacking at Gobekli Tepe is rooms and doors.
Well, in a way, you know, the structures are rooms. The doors are almost certainly what they are these so-called porthole stones. These are either large, you know, like circular rings that have been found there, fragments, or also like these stone windows that have been found there. And these would probably have been erected vertically in the walls of well, a number of the different enclosures, but they've obviously fallen out of place and they can't be positioned correctly now. The other thought is that they were actually in the roof. In other words, you know, there was a roof constructed and they were actually placed over the entrance and people actually got down into the enclosures from above. But my only worry about that is that these porthole stones, which are made of, you know, limestone, would have been so heavy that, you know, obviously once the roof became slightly unstable, they would just crash down into the ground. So, you know, those are your entrances. If we look at later Neolithic cities like Çatalhöyük in southern central Turkey, the entrances were generally from above, and then obviously you would have like little ladders going down into the rooms, and the rooms were themselves interconnected by these square little portholes, exactly of the sort that you would associate these stone portholes found at Gobekli now. But I mean, at the end of the day, that, you know, at the moment we have 1/10 excavated. Anything could be found.
Right.
And that's why people like myself and Graham Hancock, you know, and Robert Schott, you know, are crying out for them to excavate the rest of Gobekli Tepe, because we need to know as human beings, you know, we need to know what happened at the beginning, when it all kicked off, at the foundation point of our own civilization. What started it? What was going on here? We need the answers.
In your estimation, there's two questions, and we're at the end of the show, so let me try to get these in. And thank you for hanging out for an extra 15 minutes. I know it's very late in the morning, but when you're done here, go have some breakfast and go full circle. Don't go to bed, man. Stay up all day today. is this any stair steps? Any stairways leading down?
Yes, there is. Yeah, they found one very specifically close to enclosure C, which is the one that you showed with the broken off tops of the large central monoliths. That is arguably one of the earliest stone staircases in human history. I mean, and it's there. They uncovered it whilst they were trying to pile drive these huge, great wooden support beams into the ground, or pillars, base support pillars. And they uncovered it just a matter of about 2 or 3 years ago. And it's there. I mean, it steps up towards the position of the entrance into the enclosure. So yeah, it's there. I mean, this is part of the engineering that they were doing at this time. But I mean, as I said, Gobekli Tepe is going to occupy our thoughts and time for a long while yet. But it would not surprise me if there's something else like Gobekli that's going to be found.
Well, you got Karahan, and that.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, for the listeners, I'm just completing at this moment an article on Karahan Tepe, which is what I would call Gobekli Tepe's sister site. It's currently unexcavated. They've done a few trial pits around stones. And it's actually 23 miles.
Yeah, 23 miles south. Yeah.
It's sort of southeast-ish, if I remember rightly, of Gobekli Tepe. It's on the other, it's in mountains known as the Tek Mountains, which are just on the other side of the Haran Plain. Gobekli Tepe is on the north side of the Haran Plain, and Karahan is on the east side. And this is slightly later. The stones are slightly smaller, and the arrangement of the stones is different, because I was there in 2004 and I went back there recently, and here you seem to have stone avenues. So in other words, you have the same T-shaped pillars, but this time they're in pairs going up this hill and focusing on a certain point. On the north end of this this northwest to southeast orientated hill, and I was trying to work out exactly what was going on, and all the indications are, and please, if you can wait for this article, it will be posted on andrewcollins.com, very shortly, is that it too is aligned towards the Milky Way and the constellation of Cygnus, which would have been seen from this position where all of these stone avenues converge. It would have been seen setting down into a very prominent hill towards the northwest, around 8,200 to about 8,700 BC, which fits perfectly with the dating so far of the stones at Karahan Tepe. But the problem here is that it's not under the jurisdiction of the German Archaeological Institute like Gobekli Tepe.
Mm-hmm.
It's under the jurisdiction of Haran University.
Mm-hmm.
And the archaeologist involved in this is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Bahatin Shilek, who's done some very good work. I mean, he's done 2 surveys there. He's also surveyed and excavated other outlying sites connected with the same culture, some of which have got T-shaped stones as well. But I think that there's no funding involved and that he can only go so far. And the problem is that the people have been coming at night and trying to steal carvings and stones. And we're talking about local people here, because they think they can make money from them. And what happens is they try and uncover the stones, they break as they come out, and they're destroying the site. It's a tragedy, and something seriously needs to be done. And this is why I'm writing this article now about it. And I think that, the more that this particular site can go into public awareness. I mean, this could be the motherlode. This could be even bigger than Gobekli Tepe ultimately.
Well, this is what I think, and I've got to cut you off because I got to get some more in. We're at the end of the show. This is my crystal ball. Stay with me on this, Andrew. I think we're going to find evidence of a city, a large civilization in between Gobekli Tepe and Karahan. And there has been very, very little talk and discussion because we just don't know how large of a populace was put together for Gobekli Tepe. And now Karahan is right there. That's probably where a large amount of the quarrying was going on. And then you have to connect the dots between Karahan and Gobekli Tepe.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, actually, because what is between the two is the ancient city of Haran.
Yes.
Where you have this incredible astronomical tower remaining today, which is supposedly part of the of Haran University, which was there from as early as about 600 AD, and was in full flight in about 1200, 1300 AD. But I mean, what's been found there is evidence of activity going back at least 6,000 BC, and almost certainly it goes back much further still. And I've already written material to do with this and suggested that, that Haran was one of the places where the people that lived, and the people behind the construction of places like Gobekli Tepe and Karahan, that's probably where they lived, on that Haran plain in the vicinity of Haran. And that the astronomers, the so-called Chaldeans or Sabians, the people that came out of this, they were the descendants. And one important point is that it said that the founder of Haran, and this is in a Hebrew story, a person by the name of Canaan, not the one that we know from the obvious story in the Bible, actually uncovered a stone stela on which was written the astrology of the Watchers, the ancient astrology of the Watchers, and that the translation of this stela created the astronomy of the Sabians. Now that's incredible, because that stone stela, I think, was a Gobekli-like stone, and that could well have been found in the vicinity of Haran. And I think that those Watchers are the founders of Gobekli Tepe, the Swiderians, the human hybrids that came in from the north at the time of this ice age, just after this major cataclysm had taken place. These people whose knowledge and wisdom goes back at least to 30,000 BC.
How many? This is my last question, and then we'll get out of here. And I got to say thank you, and I want you to tell everybody where to get your books. But how many people do you think were living around Gobekli Tepe? What's your guesstimate? A couple of thousand, 10,000?
Well, I mean, I guessed a figure earlier on in the program, and I said 7,000.
Right.
So I mean, we're probably talking between 5,000 and 10,000 people ultimately. And remember, this would have been a series of settlements surrounding Gobekli in every area, in the north, in the west, in the area of what's now the modern city of Shanlerfa, to the south on the Haran plain, and to the east in the direction of Karahan as well. There would have been a hell of a lot of activity going on. And when you go to Gobekli, there are stone tools and fragments of stone tools everywhere. I mean, there are thousands of them still there today. And that's aside from the ones that have been picked up by the archaeologists.
That's my question. Have you ever put one in your pocket and kind of got out of there?
Never. I would never do a thing
like
that.
Stop, Andrew. I know you got at least one. Hey, listen, thank you for making me feel smart. Well, I feel smarter is is the thing. And I'd like to bring you back on the show. We've got to talk about Giza. We've got to talk about what's going on out there and all of your research. And and if you don't mind, I would like to do that. Also, Karahunj, do you plan on going to Armenia and checking that out?
It's a difficult one.
Yeah, it's
a difficult one. You know, I mean, we tried to actually organise a tour there, and it just became so problematic with red tape that we had to cancel it. But Karahunj, possibly 5,500 BC, aligned to Cygnus again.
Yep.
And almost certainly some kind of descendancy down from Gobekli Tepe.
Absolutely. And it's something that, you know, again, like Gobekli Tepe is getting the airtime that it needs. But Karahunj is something that is right there next to it, man. And I think it's equally as important for all of humanity. And I'm not joking around about that.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Well, okay, really quick, and then we're out of here. Your books, everything is available on your website?
Well, you can get signed copies via me at andrewcollins.com. Obviously, you can go the easy routes with Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where you can obviously get it as a material book or as an e-book. And if you want to know, if you like what you hear, you know, sign up for the monthly newsletter that I do that will tell you about all the latest findings and research, you know, and everything that's going. Plus tours. We're doing tours out there next year to Karahan and to Göbekli and Haran and Şanlıurfa. You know, so, you know, get in touch and keep in touch with us.
We've got all the links up. Do me one favor before I let you go. Just say Göbekli Tepe for me one more time.
Göbekli Tepe.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you, Andrew. All the best. Yeah.
Okay.
No. Nobody says it like you.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah. Well, I think I do it from authority of having spoken to a few Turkish people. So it's about right, I think.
You have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon. You need anything, you contact us. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Cheers, Jimmy.
All the best.
It.
All
Thanks
the best. All
Bye-bye.
the best. Andrew Collins, and wow, I just have to say, like I said, and I really mean this, I feel just a little bit smarter right now. Thank you, everybody. Let's we got to roll. We got to roll credits. He hung tough with us to the very bitter end. And what more can you say? Man, I'm going to WD-40 my chair tomorrow. I'm tired of reading about it. Thank you, Andrew, for coming on the show tonight. Tomorrow night, Tobias Churton. We'll be doing Aleister Crowley all night. Wednesday, Norio Hayakawa, the OG, will be here. Stay tuned. Coming up next is The Unexplained. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Music is this guy, Doug Aldrich, raiding the Rock Vault out there in Las Vegas. Show intros performed by Spaceboy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your host, Jimmy Church, and we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great, safe evening. See ya.